Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Getting Smart podcast. I'm Nate McClennen, and today we are super excited to dive into an element of our learning innovation framework that talks specifically about the learning models, how learners are supported in reaching the outcomes that are set by the system or school or district or whatever. So, in the learning model part of our framework, we talk about values and norms and climate and culture as a foundational base of the learning model. And then we talk about what are the design principles, the core beliefs about teaching and learning that schools and systems and networks can have. And then an overarching instructional framework that describes instruction, learning design, and assessment, typical things you'd find in a district. And then the learning model, the end of it is, well, how on earth do we go and implement all this? And that is around professional learning and portraits of educators and portraits of leaders. And so today we're diving into professional learning and specifically classroom observation and how do teachers learn and improve. And we know a bunch of things about teaching and learning. And so number one is that it's obvious to all of our listeners and really anyone who's been in a school, which is most of us. We know that good teachers make a difference in student outcomes. We can all remember one of our greatest teachers and how they've helped us improve and grow and engaged us. We also know that significant amount of time and money is spent on professional learning and PD. And finally, we also know that a lot of PD is not super effective. And I was looking up in terms of the research around effectiveness in prep for this podcast. And the average effect size, when you look at test scores, the average effect size on PD on outcomes for students is around 0.06. It's super small. So some of my go-to resources, Linda Darling-Hammond wrote a 2017 paper on great PD. And among other things, it talks about how do you provide coaching and expert support? How do you offer opportunities for feedback and reflection? So these all support the idea of classroom observation. Another great study by Sims at the University College in London and a bunch of other folks. How do you help teachers develop specific techniques for implementation to help learners reach outcomes? And then they have a nice pivot on this is it's not only helping them with techniques, but how do you embed those changes in practice so that they become routine? And I think today we're going to talk about how do we make things routine that we know work. So that's my preamble. And then there's another interesting connection here for this pod is that a long time ago, I helped build a tech solution that used classroom video. And we actually uploaded the video to the internet and crowdsourced feedback from an expert and verified group of teachers to help all teachers in the community get better faster. We started using video cameras and then eventually built an app for the iPhone. And we learned a lot and eventually ran out of steam. But with the advent of AI, things we think have changed in this arena. So classroom data collection and analysis on teaching can be faster, and replacing the crowdsourced approach that I started with a decade or so ago with AI. And that's a super intriguing possibility to help teachers get better faster. So when I met our guest today, Habib Bangura, and I met at ASU GSV in San Diego, I was super excited to dive deeper into the urban assembly, and specifically the AI-driven video instructional feedback tool that he described to me that he's building. So Habib is the managing director of programs at Urban Assembly. It's an education org that focuses on advancing students' economic and social mobility by improving public education. No small task, but a really important task. So welcome, Habib.
Nate, thank you so much for having me. Excited to engage in this conversation. And thank you so much for the way that you framed it.
Awesome. Well, we're going to start with my preamble question for a lot of folks. What teacher engaged you the most? And not just engage you, because we can have fun teachers that we actually don't learn much from, which is engaging, but not great for learner outcomes. So engaged and helped you learn the most in K-12 experience. So reach back a bit and who was that teacher and how did it work?
Yeah. So there are three educators that come to mind. And I say educators specifically because they weren't necessarily teachers. One is a teacher. Miss Ingwerson was my 11th grade ELA teacher. And I remember her distinctly because I did not get great grades in her course. She was a very strict grader, but I really appreciate her. And I remember her even now, so many decades after leaving her classroom, because of the quality of feedback that she provided me. The quality of feedback that she gave me translated into me becoming a much stronger writer. I didn't like it at the time because I was in 11th grade. I was 16 or 17. But then when I got to college at Northeastern and I saw my peers struggling to put together college level essays that I was able to breeze through, I could trace that back to the feedback that she gave me way back when I was in her class in 11th grade. The other educator I wanted to name, and I will always name him because he remains a life mentor of mine, is David Dottie. And I appreciate him, and because he was my motivation for doing well in school. The background to that is I floundered in high school, ninth and 10th grade, was like completely disengaged, uninterested. But then I transferred into a school later on after I met Dave, who was my basketball coach. He was also a teacher. He actually didn't teach me, but I had such a strong relationship with him that even when I had free periods, I would go hang out in his class. I think he taught economics or some math class at the time. But I remember doing really well in school and being super diligent with all my schoolwork because I didn't want to disappoint him. But it was the strength of the relationship that I had with him that made a difference.
Yeah, great examples. It feels like whenever I ask this question, it's always about high relationship, high expectations. And when both of those ingredients are present, then learner outcomes are great, right? Because students feel like they
Absolutely.
belong, they feel like they're motivated, they feel like they're learning all those kinds of pieces. And I suspect
Absolutely.
that we're going to hear more about that today. So you've done a number of interesting things in your career so far, and you've been at the Urban Assembly for the last couple of years. So give our listeners a sense of what is the Urban Assembly?
Yeah, so the Urban Assembly, as you mentioned, is a network of 22 unscreened public schools in New York City. And these are schools that were founded on a very simple but powerful belief. And we're founded on the belief that every young person deserves access to an education that is rooted in purpose, opportunity, and connection. Very practically, what that means is we built our school. Our founder, Richard Kahn, about 30 years ago, founded Urban Assembly Schools in partnership with the DOE upon reflecting on the disjuncture between what kids were learning in schools and what industry demanded of them when they would graduate from schools. So he built New York City's actually first CTE schools on the idea that schools should be founded on career connected learning. So the things that you learn in school have to translate directly to what industry would demand of you. So that's one of the design principles that our schools are built on. Socio emotional learning. So this is an acknowledgement that the skills that we need for success, both in high school and beyond, go beyond content level knowledge. But every young person needs the skills to navigate the opportunities and challenges that are inevitable in any sort of life adventure. And the third one is around high quality instruction, right? We know that learning hinges on the quality of instruction, the quality of educators that sit in front of young people, and the quality of feedback and instruction that they provide to those young people to help keep them engaged, to help facilitate their learning, develop critical thinking skills, and so on and so forth.
And so I love the idea of purpose, opportunity, and connection, right? Like that really resonates with me. Standard model. So if I walk into any classroom in the Urban Assembly, is there a look and feel? Because we know some, there's some networks of schools that are very similar classroom to classroom. Some are loosely affiliated with a set of design principles. So where does the Urban Assembly sit on that spectrum?
So, career connected learning, socio emotional learning are deeply embedded as a part of our school culture. High quality instruction is something that is really very much emphasized in terms of the level of investment that our schools place into teacher professional development, teacher feedback, and things like that. Our schools are all small schools. So, you would see when you walk into any urban assembly school, you will find the level of relationship between students and teacher tends to go deeper than what you would find in traditional larger public schools because they were intentionally founded to be small schools that facilitate that personalized engagement with young people. You would also see career connected learning being lived out. So whether that's students engaging in simulated, whether that's students in our school for emergency, what is it? School for Emergency Medicine in Manhattan who get to engage in simulating emergency childbirths, or students developing design portfolios at our school in our Maker Academy school in Manhattan. These are some of the things that you will tend to see as commonalities across our urban assembly schools.
Broader than the 22 schools, your network, you're a model provider, right? So you're replicating that model in partner schools across the country. Is that how that looks? What's the scale of that?
Yeah, the story behind that is our founder got into public education with the goal of improving public education, not just in New York City, but also across the nation. As you would know, Nate, that's not a thing that you can build your way to. So after building our initial set of urban assembly schools, the next iteration of our thinking around how we can influence public education was to say, well, we've learned quite a bit about how to build schools that position young people who can beat the odds. What if we can take all the knowledge that we've learned and disseminate it as far and as wide as we possibly can? So then that's where the partnership model began, where we would send our experts out into schools and districts across the country who were interested in embedding career connected learning, socio emotional learning in similar ways that we have with the level of success that we were able to achieve. So that's what it looks like right now. We have partner schools in 9 states, about 79 schools within our portfolio of partner schools.
Great. And they're all SEL, career connected, high quality instruction. Those three core tenants are in those partner schools.
Correct. Our SEL work has the largest scale because I think that is in part due to the pandemic and how it just illuminated the need for schools to focus more deeply on helping young people develop social emotional skills. So we find that our SEL work has had far greater reach than other elements of our work. We are seeing an uptick in interest in career connected learning
Yeah.
because there's a lot of attention from philanthropy and governments in that space as well. But I would say SEL, PRS, and then we also have some partners that are interested in instructional supports.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right. That gives listeners great context. Love the work that's happening. Love the fact that it's a network of schools and then a larger network of schools. So the model provider system is really effective, I think. So let's dive into the topic of today, which is around instruction. What does it look like in a classroom? Do you have a set of criteria already across the 22 schools? Was it being used? Even before you thought about this tech solution, right? How was it being used? How did that evolve? How effective was it, et cetera? What was the challenge you were trying to solve for?
Yeah, so the challenge that we were trying to solve for was how to improve instructional quality at scale. So I mentioned after building schools for a while, we decided a more efficient way to disseminate our learnings so that we continue to support our a vision towards improving public education at large was to send experts into schools to provide leadership or capacity coaching supports. In the instructional space, we did what most other educational organizations did, which is to send instructional coaches into schools to serve as extended capacity to provide observation and feedback to educators in the schools that we were working with. And we did so quite effectively. In fact, in our Algebra Success program, which was our instructional coaching program specifically designed to support improvements in Algebra 1 outcomes, we actually found that schools that subscribed to our Algebra Success coaching had much higher algebra regents pass rates. So the regents exams in New York are part of the grad requirement in New York City. And when
Right.
young people were finding it hard to pass algebra 1, the algebra 1 regents, that became a sort of gatekeeper or roadblock towards accessing more rigorous math curriculum that will enable them access to their post-secondary goals. The challenge, however, even as effective as we were, was that we could only get to about a handful of teachers. And we would constantly get feedback from the principals that we worked with that said, listen, it's been helpful that you worked with our algebra teacher, but we also have a science teacher or PE teacher, or you name the content area teacher who could benefit from your support. For us as a nonprofit organization, we actually did the math and realized that just to support the teachers within our urban assembly network of schools, so this is 22 schools, it would have cost us $3 million a year just to provide adequate support to those teachers, right? So
Right.
as you can imagine, for a small nonprofit in New York City, that was cost prohibitive, right?
Right.
So it became this constraint to reaching our mission, which is how do we improve instructional quality at scale? We know that instructional coaching is a proven methodology, but it was just cost prohibitive to be able to do so.
So you already had the criteria set, I imagine. So what are the look fors or whatever you end up calling them?
Right.
Were those generated internally or did you use a model that was external? What model are you using?
Yeah, so we originally created our own model that was very content specific. Over time, we evolved our instructional coaching model to be less content specific and more focused on pedagogy. We did lean very heavily on the Class S framework
Yep.
because it had about 40 years of research behind it. And essentially, in our view, the class represents a composite of what we know from research to be high quality instructional interactions. So we leaned really heavily on that, and that's the methodology that we used in the instructional coaching work that we provided with schools.
Got it. Okay, so we got the challenge. We have the approach using some version of Class S. Challenges is way too expensive. You need way more coaches. You don't have the resources for it. Like not
Yep.
no school would have the resources for it. And so, talk about the genesis of the idea. Was it because AI started to emerge? ChatGPT was released. What's the aha moment for you?
Yeah, I mean, so the timing of the technology was perfect, right? Because I mentioned the work that we were doing with our algebra success coaching. It was really effective, but our principals were appreciative of the supports that we were providing for them, and so frustrated because we could not get high quality instructional coaching to all of the teachers that needed it. Then came AI, right? So our schools had moved on to video instructional coaching for years prior to AI coming out. But the challenge with even with video instructional coaching, which by the way has pretty strong research behind it,
Yep.
we can when we talk about the best foot forward and the work that they did in that space. But the challenge when we spoke with our instructional coaches is that I still have to go back, watch the video, identify high quality instructional moments, which on my best day would take me about 2 hours because I have to start and stop because it's not like I have a continuous 2 hours to watch a video, 45 minutes to watch a video. On an average day, it would take our instructional coaches about 4 hours to go back, watch the video, do the clips, transcribe notes, summarize it, schedule time to meet with the teacher. So it was extremely time consuming, very laborious for them to do it. AI and honestly, if you pay attention to
Yeah.
sports, they've had the technology for quite a while now to where your favorite player at any timeout or any given point of in the game can actually pause, go to the sidelines, pull out a device, and watch the most recent play set so that they can make shifts to their play in a way that allows them to be far more effective. So our thinking was, well, if LeBron James has the ability to improve on his performance in real time in that way, what's to stop us from providing the same capability to teachers, right? So that's the genesis of Project Cafe. It's a platform that uses AI and video to provide real-time instructional feedback to teachers. And I want to note that the feedback that we designed our tool to provide developmental feedback and not evaluative feedback because
Right.
all of the research converges on the idea that feedback instruction is more likely to improve when the feedback is formative, consistent, and not perceived as being punitive by teachers. So evaluative feedback does not check the box on any of those. So we are very much positional on leaning into developmental feedback as a thing that's going to improve instruction.
Set the scene. iPhone based app, video camera, and this pilot. I mean, I know it sounds like you're
Yeah.
still in pilot and testing. 22 classrooms. What's the setup? The tech setup.
Yeah. So it is video based, so it can be an iPad, two microphones, so that we can collect audio. It can
Yep.
also be your iPhone or your Android phone set up in a classroom with microphones, one strategically placed in a classroom, another that's clipped to the educator's collar, lapel pin, and record. And within 48 hours, you'll get your analytics back, and it gives you feedback on student teacher talk time. It gives you feedback on classroom climate measures like encouraging language, insulting language. It gives you feedback on topic speech. So this is a measure of how well what the teacher's talking about and what the students are talking about map onto the class objective of the day.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay, so let's dive into some of those on topic speech. There must be some entry the teacher enters prior to the classroom objective or the lesson plan, or what's the preload or not? Or does it pick up from what the
No,
teacher
so yeah,
says?
so the AI picks up actually when you log onto your cafe instance, the first thing when you click into your cafe video, for instance, the first thing you see is an AI generated summary that captures your course objectives, key questions, and things like that. So that gets automatically captured by AI. And then the AI looks at that and then tracks the conversations that are happening over time to see the level of alignment between what's being discussed and what the original objectives were. So it doesn't require teacher manual input. It actually reads that from the class transcript. It is very sensitive, right? So for instance, as an example, in an ELA class, they were reading the section on the civil rights or Black history, and they were reading a book where the characters in the book mentioned some words or they might use some derogatory language.
Right,
So
right.
the AI would actually pick up on that as negative
Ah,
language.
right,
But
right.
that's
Yeah.
but that's where the power of video comes in, right? Because the user has access to the video clips of the instances that are being floated as negative language, we can
Okay.
actually then see, like we can actually then put the context together to say, well, yes, technically speaking, this is negative language, but this is not an indicator that this is a classroom, this is a negative climate classroom.
So how are teachers reacting? What's the do they like it? Is it helping them? Are they nervous? What's the emotional part of this? As I mean, you've already been doing a lot. There's been a lot of video already, so I assume these teachers have been videoed before. But any reactions?
Yeah. So, I mean, the reactions are varied. What we find is that our newer teachers tend to feel a lot more comfortable with the
Mhm.
video recording. I think as humans, we're generally uncomfortable with watching ourselves on video. The great thing about our tool is that you see only clips of it because what the innovation that we introduced in this space is that the AI actually goes through the video and clips the instances of high quality instructional interaction. So it doesn't
Uh,
show you the entire thing. So they just see chunks of videos of themselves. But the feedback has been generally positive. Our primary use case has been with instructional coaches, and they've just been appreciative that they now have a tool that reduces the time cost of pulling high quality instructional moves that they can then foreground in conversations with their coachees. No longer do they have to go back and watch an entire 45-minute video clip. They can just pull instances that they want to highlight in their coaching conversations. And it reduces the time that it takes them to prep for and support their coachees quite significantly. So that's been key feedback that we've been getting from folks. Funny thing with as amazing as the overall technology is, the one thing that actually gets the most reactions from our educators is the downloadable CSV transcript. So the tool actually gives you the opportunity to download a transcript. Let's just say open-ended versus closed-ended questions. You can download that and it gives you every single open-ended and closed-ended questions that were asked through the entirety of the course already coded as open and closed-ended question.
wow.
That is actually not something we expected to be a feature, a key feature
Right,
of the
right.
tool. We just built it in, but that's been the thing that folks have been really impressed with and really engaged with because it allows them to go through and analyze level of questioning just beyond the binary open close ended questions. Because you have the transcript, you can now go deeper to say to evaluate the quality of even the open ended questions that are being asked to say, well, what is the level of sort of cognitive rigor that this demands of young people, that the question that you ask demands of your students.
Yeah. So I'm hearing there's a clear benefit of the efficiency side of things, and then there's the side benefit of like a deep analysis of, in this case, open and closed questions that probably would emerge in a bunch of different places, like whatever question the teacher's working on or area the teacher's working on. And so biggest learning for you, so you've got the solution, you're piloting, but you as part of this team that
Mhm.
created this thing, what's been the biggest learning so far for you? And then where's the team headed next with it? I mean, AI's, we know it's growing every single day. We're getting new releases and all sorts of different interesting use cases. So what have you learned and what's next?
Yeah. So the biggest learning actually connects to what I just mentioned around how impressed people are with the with the downloadable transcript.
Yeah.
And this is common in whenever you're developing a tool for mass use, right? So we develop these tools obviously in partnership with schools. A lot of the design features and the functionalities that are built into the tool were informed by educators. But we do so with an imagination of what the general user base will find useful. And then they actually start handling the tool, and it turns out it's a downloadable clip, downloadable
Right.
transcript that they find most impressive. So that's one thing, and again, it's common for anyone that's in the development space. But where we want to take it next, so we I talked about the metrics that we can currently show. We have on topic speech, quality of feedback, op- open-ended, closed-ended questions, student-teacher talk time. But next up, actually, in our roadmap, and these will be available at the end of June, we're going to be looking at teacher wait time.
Oh yeah.
We're going to be looking at previews and summaries. We're going to be looking at language sentiment. And I feel like there's one more that I'm forgetting. So those are the metrics that we will be foregrounding as early as the end of June. But in terms of what's next with the technology, the technology continue AI technology continues to develop so rapidly and at such a fast pace. I'm really interested and I'm really eager for us to begin to tap into like the video based metrics, because right now most of our metrics are
Yeah.
LLM based. So it captures audio, it captures metrics based on the transcript. But we're looking forward to previewing metrics that focus, for example, on teacher proximity. So we look forward to being able to show, for instance, that hey, we notice that you're spending more time on the left side of the room than you are on the right side of the room. We noticed that you when you stood by this student, we saw, or when you moved closer to this subgroup of students, we noticed that engagement spiked from students. So we're really eager to get to that phase of development. It's definitely something that is in our roadmap, and not in an immediate roadmap.
I know that you follow Ethan Mollick as well, but his last blog post was around the developments in video and VO3 in terms of just producing video. So there's no doubt that the analysis incorporated in would be super helpful, I think, in my opinion. What's the metric of success for you all? Like, how do you know it's work? I mean, you have the research base around the particular things that you're talking about language use and on-topic speech. But then, are you going to then, or will AIR correlate that to class performance, or what's the long-term study on this?
That's the goal, right? So we want to see deltas in all of the right areas. So we want to
Mm.
see teachers doing more of the things that we know work, but we also want to see the correlation between improvements in teacher practice and improvements in student outcomes. So that is a part of the research agenda that we have in the roadmap as well. We want to be able to look at improvements in teacher practice as well as the relationship to student outcomes.
Really interesting. Appreciate it. And I'm fascinated to see where it will go. We'll put show notes in. Is there a direct link to do you have a site yet for the product or not? Or is it still in pilot mode?
We do have, so if folks are interested in getting their hands on Project Cafe, which is a tool, they can email me directly. They can also go through our Urban Assembly website
Okay.
and just fill out the contact information, and they can get a hold of us that way.
Perfect. We'll put all this in the show notes. So,
Mhm.
okay, so that's Project Cafe. Love what's happening there. Let's take a big step back, and you're thinking about big ideas. You're using AI, and I'm sort of interested in your take on AI and education. Right? You're using video for a very specific use case: teacher in classroom working with students. Right? Which
Yep.
is
Mhm.
it's how education has been. Maybe that's how education will be. Is AI more disruptive than that? Is it going to blow the whole model out of the water? What's your personal take as you've been reading and thinking and listening and watching?
I think it already has. I think we haven't caught up to it. I think education, unfortunately, in relationship to technology,
Oh yeah.
education tends to always be behind the eight ball. But I think AI has already disrupted education, right? Schools have not caught up to AI, to the disruptions that AI is sort of bringing forth in the education space. I think there are definitely things to be concerned about in terms of the disruptions that AI is introducing in the education space, but just in society generally.
Yeah.
But I think there are opportunities that that educators and schools can take advantage of, just in terms of the ability that AI introduces to reduce the time costs and the speed of getting access to information that really was a key constraint in education in the past, right? When you think about a lot of the things that constrain educators or that constrain our ability to improve outcomes in a lot of the across a lot of key metrics, when you boil it down at the abstract level, we can reduce it to time and information, right? So
Yep.
we don't have enough time to do the thing, even though we know what needs to be done. Or there are a few set of people who know or have access to the insights required to do the thing and do it really well. And it just costs a lot of money to get those people. This is why we pay consultants lots and lots of money. But now AI actually holds and can synthesize a massive corpus of information and make it available to lots and lots of people in an easily digestible way. So I think there's an opportunity for education, for schools to take advantage of the capabilities of AI to begin to see massive improvements and rapid improvements across these indicators of high quality teaching and learning.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think I love how you boiled that down to sort of this time and information. as the key constraint. And I think some of my reservations are, okay, well, if you save a lot of time, what will you replace that time with? And you have to make sure that you're doing things that are replacing it with things that will help student outcomes. So if we become more efficient at creating terrible worksheets, then that doesn't help us, right? so
Yeah.
so that's the doom side of things. But the boom side is that the teaching has always had the commodity of time as an issue, and the commodity of access to information. And so I believe that that's going to be the sort of the added advantage, and with a caveat that like you said as well, acknowledging that education seems to be always years behind where technology is. So technology is, you've got billions and billions of dollars being invested in these large language models, and whether it's language or video or audio or whatever's next, and schools just are far behind. So agree
Yeah.
with you there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think there's a window of opportunity, or there's an opportunity here. And actually, I think AI is forcing us to make the shifts in our approach to teaching and learning that we've known for a really long time that we needed to make. So we've talked about project-based learning for a really long time, but we kind of have been slow to scale that, partly because we were still looking at a world of work that
Yep.
rewarded and prized just knowledge based skills, right? So it's like, you would hire people for what they know, right?
Yep.
But AI, in the age of AI, I will not hire you for what you know. I will hire you for your ability to translate what you know to solving problems that I'm dealing with, or to creating products that generate value for me, right? That is project based learning, right? So if we as a school system are still stuck in a paradigm of just rote memorization so that you can show what you know without showing what you can do with what you know, then I think we're setting our kids up for failure, because we're setting them up for jobs that do not value that skill anymore. So I think it is putting necessary pressure on education to switch into a paradigm that is more aligned with what we've known for a really long time to be an engaging, high quality educational experience.
So well said. Is that, we're hearing more and more anecdotes of, especially in higher ed, and I know what's happening in high school, as having a few of my own kids who are in high school, and then knowing a lot of high schoolers, is that if the assignment is knowledge based and that's all you're asking for, it is almost guaranteed that a GPT or some other version will be used to
It
complete
can
it,
do it,
right?
and it can do
Yeah.
it better, right?
But it can't collaborate with other peers to
Right.
achieve a particular project that's relative or related and contextualized and purposeful for that particular community. So AI should, it's a forcing mechanism to say, we need to shift. And if you don't shift, education is not going to be worthwhile for the students that you're teaching. Really intrigued by what's going on at the Urban Assembly, not only the work you're doing with the theme-based small schools, because we love that kind of stuff, but also Project Cafe. A lot of takeaways here. A reminder, that the fundamental important factor is around great teachers make a difference in kids' lives. And so the tool that Project Cafe tool you're building is helping great teachers get better and helping all teachers get better, and using AI to increase the efficiency of coaches so that they can spend time on the real things that are really important, which is conversations around video rather than collating, organizing, transcribing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're really onto something here. I'm hopeful that some of our listeners will find it intriguing enough to go and reach out and see how they can implement it or test it out in their schools. I appreciate that the video is coming next, and how does that play into the audio transcript and the language part of it? And then again, going back to that conclusion about that if anyone has any trepidation about using AI, they should think about the limitations of information access and the limitations of time. And if AI can solve for one or both of those things, we should be able to do much better education and learning experience, so all students can reach higher outcomes. So Habib, great to have you on today. Super excited to see where you're headed next. And thank you for coming in.
All right. Thanks for having me, Nate.
Thanks for tuning in to the Getting Smart podcast today. We want this podcast to be actionable, insightful, and a great way to learn about what's next in learning. In order to stay on the cutting edge, we need people in the field to tell us what they're hearing, what they're wanting, and what they're needing to learn more about. Got a topic or a guest in mind? Send your recommendations to me, Mason at gettingsmart.com. And if you like what you're hearing, don't forget to leave a review in Apple Podcasts or subscribe wherever you listen. Feel free to share the podcast on social media using the hashtag GSPodcasts. Thanks so much.